Should you watch Dragon Ball Z? Hi, today I'm Gase, and today I'll be convincing you on why I think that could be a great idea. Dragon Ball Z is an incredibly iconic anime series, like action shonen series. It's very well known, so anybody who's listening to this probably has either already seen it or has already been thinking about seeing it. But there might be a few people here and there who've heard how bad Super and Daima, which I will talk about later on in a future video, has been kind of poor. So maybe they don't really want to check it out. And since anime is taking a different route in terms of being a bit more darker, having a lot more blood, naked scenes, edgy scenes, all these different things, even though it's not as aggressive as it once was when Chainsaw Man and all those others released, it's still kind of there. So maybe there's a few people who don't really want to see this, but let me get into why you should be watching it. First of all, Goku, one of the most iconic anime protagonists of all time, I would argue is not one of the best shonen protagonists, to be fair, because of what happens with Super and Daima and how his attitude and his overall character gets ruined. But in Z itself, it's actually quite good, and is why a lot of people consider him to be top 3 probably. Now, his entire goal is to continuously save his people, his planet, and fight several different martial arts masters and monsters and all these different beings to try and save humanity. And in Z specifically, he does meet up against several different aliens and several different genetically created fighters who are all about trying to enslave others, get the Dragon Balls, destroy the planet, and this continues on after Z. And this for me is the peak where they get that balance correct in between Goku constantly fighting, but at the same time, not every fight is predictable because there's a lot of things that happen that are quite interesting and tie in perfectly to the theme of that specific arc. If we look at Frieza and the entire Frieza arc, the Namekian saga, and how it's all about how Frieza is enslaving all these people and he's trying to find the Dragon Balls once he learns about the Dragon Balls, and how Goku gets involved because he wants to stop Frieza from becoming immortal, because if Frieza was to ever become immortal and continue to enslave other planets, he could eventually reach to Earth. But not only that, the other Z fighters get involved, like Gohan and Krillin, and obviously the eventual Z fighter Vegeta, because Vegeta wants to get his own Dragon Balls for his own purposes. He gets involved as well. It's quite clever how he gets involved, and because of his fight against Goku, he becomes much more stronger, and he then takes revenge on some of Frieza's lapdogs. However, he does meet up with Krillin and Gohan, and he's not the nicest towards them, so obviously he kind of clashes with them. And his entire arc I explained in a previous video about is Vegeta the best Dragon Ball villain in history, because this arc has a pretty good ending with him when something happens to him. I don't want to spoil it, but the entire Namekian saga is about getting these Dragon Balls, and then the Z fighters get involved in order to help the Namekians. And this is where Dragon Ball Z strikes the perfect balance, where in every single arc, even the Buu saga arc, a lot of the other Z fighters are heavily involved. If you look at the Namekian saga with Frieza, Krillin, Gohan, Piccolo, and Vegeta are heavily involved in the story well before Goku gets involved. And when Goku does get involved, it's not so smooth sailing, and Goku does get beaten up a few times, which is interesting to see. And as an audience member, you know Goku is not the strongest in terms of being stronger than Frieza, so you are feeling a lot of tension on how in the world is Goku going to surpass this guy, and they're constantly going back and forth. It's quite a great fight. It is a bit long, and in the original broadcast, in terms of the actual serialized anime, the fight goes on for a very long time, and I think it was confirmed that the fight happens in 3 days, like the whole fight, and then the final fight is a couple of hours or something. It's just crazy numbers, but they slow it down so much, and they add in all these different elements where Goku is drowning and he's thinking about his family, and that gives him strength, which is obviously used in later arcs. But it's a pretty great fight, and And one of the best things about Dragon Ball Z is incredible fights. The fights are really, really good. I don't think any of the other IPs in terms of Dragon Ball ever reached the level of fights that some of these have, like Goku versus Frieza, Goku versus Cell, Vegeta versus Goku. There's so many great fights in here. But anyways, and we get through the entire Namekian saga, and Goku, I'm pretty sure you've seen him turning Super Saiyan. It's such a well-known thing. It's pretty hard not to see that. But even if you have, what happens before in terms of the character relationships with Vegeta, Frieza, and so many of the other Frieza lapdogs, and Krillin, Gohan, and the Ginyu Force, who are so funny and one of the most beloved villain groups in Dragon Ball. There's a lot of great things that happen. And then you go into the Cell Saga, same thing with the Cell Saga, where it's not easy in terms of Goku coming in there and being the hero immediately. In fact, Goku does get something happen to him that kind of rules him out at the beginning of the Cell Saga, which is called the Android Saga, that leads into the Cell Saga. And it's all about the Z Fighters again. It's about Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan is here, but he's not really as involved as he is later on. Krillin is here, Tien is here, like quite a few of the Z Fighters are here to try and help, which is amazing. And they do help quite a lot throughout the entire arc. And then you move on into the Cell Saga, the same thing. And Goku's not the hero in this saga either. So far in Z, we had the Saiyan Saga where Goku isn't completely the hero. He still needs help from the Z Fighters. You go into the Namekian Saga, the same thing when Goku's recovering. You go into the Android Saga, the same thing when Goku's recovering. You go into the Cell Saga, the same thing in terms of who actually is the true hero of the Cell Saga. You then move on into the Buu Saga, and this is where we start to see a bad trend for the future of Dragon Ball, where every time the Z Fighters get involved, it just doesn't feel like they are given really too much power or too much airtime to be the true heroes like the other arcs. Like something always happens for them to lose so that Goku and the other characters get involved. However, Goku is still not the main protagonist for a lot of this actually. Like, okay, I wouldn't say a lot, maybe half of this, because the other Z Fighters are involved. Vegeta is heavily involved with this incredible Majin Vegeta 4. And then you move on into the Gotenks situation in terms of the fusion. You move on into how Piccolo is involved. This is the worst arc in Dragon Ball Z, so be very wary of that. But still, you move on into Dragon Ball, like the worst arc of the Dragon Ball Z entire manga, entire anime. But it's still much better than the majority of Super and Daima as well. So again, that's still a positive. Trust me, I know you may have not ever seen Super and Daima. Trust me. Okay, if you ever do, this is the best out of the lot, and it is quite incredible in terms of some of the action. Like, I really love Super Buu and Buuhan, and you know, Evil Buu versus Fat Buu and that entire fight. I love the arc of Buu kind of learning to love things and change and becoming a good guy. That's not much of a spoiler because there's still a lot of other things that happen as well, and it's quite interesting to see how just the fusion situation happens. And we do get the very famous fusion as well through other fusion means and a beloved character through that. But this is the worst arc, so there is so many things wrong with this arc, so many things wrong. And if I gave this arc a review, I would get into everything. But yeah, just there's a lot of things wrong with it. There's a lot of contrivances. There's a lot of people powering up and powering down in situations where they shouldn't be. There's a lot of unexplainable things that happen when the characters do lose at times. There's a lot of fake out deaths as well. Like, it is quite annoying, and the concept of who's alive and who's dead gets thrown around a lot, so it's just all over the place. But you still get some pretty good things, like I said. So you may enjoy the ending to the saga. I really enjoyed it, where Goku shows exactly why he is Goku and why he's such a beloved hero. And getting into the end of Z, say it was a really nice wrap up for the end of Dragon Ball Z, and then obviously Super and Daima ruined it. But anyways, it's a really nice wrap up, and how it ends leads up into GT, which I also spoke about how you should watch Dragon Ball GT as well. So the entire series itself as a whole is honestly just a lot of fights. It is a lot of lessons here and there about progression, love, friendship, going beyond your own limits. There is also elements with Vegeta in terms of just feeling useless, and maybe some hints here and there of him getting depression as well, which is really insane. I never noticed that as a kid, but now I do. And on top of all of that, you just get to see one of the most beloved characters in all of anime truly be at his best. No other anime in Dragon Ball portrays Goku better. You could argue OG Dragon Ball, which I also spoke about in terms of a video, like a should you watch video. I think you should watch it before this one, but this is where Goku truly grows as a character, and then obviously Boo kind of puts that into question, I can't lie. But it's not as bad as the others. And if you enjoy a lot of shonen elements and some shonen tropes, not all the bad ones that exist nowadays, I can't lie, but some of them still exist, like the classical, you're stronger than me? Oh, I'm stronger than you now because friends. That does happen here, but it's not as annoying at times. And then, you know, you get to later arcs and sometimes it can be, but again, it's not as annoying as modern day anime. You do get a lot of great character arcs in terms of villains like Piccolo Vegeta. I mean, man, Piccolo and Gohan's story is amazing about how he becomes. You should watch it. And yeah, if you love action, if you love martial arts fights, if you love bright lights and aura and people screaming to unleash their power, and you love just the huge hits and just fighters going at it until the very end, you are absolutely going to love Dragon Ball Z. It's truly good for that. It really is. And that is it for my should you watch Dragon Ball Z video. If you want to watch the other ones, like should you watch Dragon Ball and should you watch Dragon Ball OT GT, you should go and check it out. And yeah, that's pretty much it.